Welcome to the Revolution of Being podcast. Here we get raw, deep, real, and discuss all things high-level spirituality, healing, money, and business. Together, we're going to be interviewing industry experts and bringing you wisdom and insights from our personal journeys and others with whom you can learn from. Collapse time as you evolve and enjoy the ride. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode on the Revolution of Being. We're going to dive into our personal journeys with psilocybin. This is a really hot topic that so many people are talking about these days. You know, you hear a lot about plant medicine journeys, a lot of different individuals going to Peru and different countries to explore their own consciousness, their own healing journey. And because it's becoming such a big topic, we thought we'd like to go into our own personal journeys about, kind of what our experiences have been. There's a lot of untrue information or kind of scary information that exists about the different healing options that are out there. And we're just going to speak to our personal experience and some of the research that we've done that we can bring to you. So if it's something you're pondering, maybe this will be informational. So to get us started, Jess, when you and I were starting to look into the medicine, you really kind of had your journey first. You had the call much sooner than I did. I shouldn't say much sooner, but sooner than I did. Do you want to get us started with kind of what got you to the point of the medicine and then your journey with that?
Yeah, that was such an odd thing to have happen. I remember you and I were talking, and you were talking about plant medicine. And honestly, I had not really heard that term much. I heard it a little bit over the past couple of years, but it was an area that I felt really uncomfortable with. So that's me. I was really uncomfortable with it. I'm not somebody who dabbles in much of anything. I'm pretty reactive to a lot of different, even natural substances. So I just never felt a draw to that kind of thing. But what was really weird is I was going through some of my own stuff and I was having a difficult time just kind of maneuvering it through more of the traditional modalities. And I was trying to figure out, what else can I do? I'm a problem solver. And I know we're going to go into that in the next episode. So make sure to tune into that, because we're going to tell you a little bit more about the background for us both that brought us to this. So you can figure out how that all looks. But I had heard the term. I had found a podcast, and it was a gentleman talking about MDMA. So if you're familiar with that, it's another psychedelic. It's another medicine that is used in healing. And I don't know, something kind of drew me into it. And you had mentioned plant medicine, and then I saw this, and there was just this kind of organic unfolding. And when he was telling the story about how he used that medicine to help his wife heal from some significant trauma and depression that was completely destroying her life and her ability to be a mom, to be a spouse, I was really intrigued by it, and it spoke to me. So that was kind of the push to go, what is this? And then through some exploration with you, there was a little bit of digging, and I even spoke with my youngest son. He's 19, and he had just gone through a psych class in college, and he lit up when I said psilocybin. That was the medicine that I started to feel kind of a pull towards. And so, yeah, I ended up going on my first journey a little bit before you, just a little bit. And I was trying to inform myself. I was trying to learn as much as I could. There's some fantastic documentaries out there. I think the first one I watched was Fantastic Fungi. Fascinating journey of just understanding what this plant is, because there was a huge call to this back in the hippie days, I guess you could say, the Woodstock, the peace, love, all that stuff. But there's a very different energy around it now, and people are really discovering that there is a ton of benefits. So I was feeling really called to it. I went on my first journey. I went on the hero's journey, and that felt like an act of bravery. So when you don't know, and you don't know what you're going to walk into, you have to really be in a state of surrender. And so prior to doing the medicine, I did a lot of learning, understanding, having a lot of intention. So what was it like? A lot of people asked me what it was like. And I want to put the disclaimer out here first that I promise you no journey will be the same. I've had a few different experiences, but my first one, walking in, not really knowing, I set an intention of peace. I really wanted peace in my soul. I wanted to feel that relief. And I didn't know what that would mean in the journey. I mean, on one side, it could be this beautiful, pleasant, euphoric, amazing experience that makes me feel connected to everything and gives me a deeper understanding of everything outside of myself and inside of myself. On the other hand, it could be a loop of all my insecurities, all my fears, visual representations. No idea. I knew anything was possible. So that is the first surrender you have to make. And so in my journey, the first time, it was quite an experience. It was quite an experience. And so it starts with, a pretty significant body phase. And so just to break it down for you, the body phase is where you're integrating with that medicine. It is connecting with you. And it's heavy. It's kind of like, oh, I drank a little too much wine. My body felt heavy. It was a little different. But that was where you practice the first layer of surrender, and you practice your breathing, and you really just start having a conversation with yourself. It is a magical experience to be that much inside of yourself. We've both experienced this coming out of the body phase. There's a lot of tears. We've had a lot of waterworks, whether we're laughing, we're crying, whatever it is. There's just this release that happens, and it is profound because when that release happens, you're on the other side of something. Every time it feels a bit like an initiation. And now keep in mind, this is not recreational. This is ceremonial. We're doing this in a very different way. We have a setting, we have help, we have support, and we have intentions. And so you get to that side. And my experience the first time on the hero's journey was profound and magical. I had, I was very grounded, surprisingly for the dose that I had, but I felt this overwhelming sense of there is no good, there is no bad, there just is, and everything works in conjunction with everything. So on top of having these incredible heavenly visuals, and it was evening, so the lights were just, I said, I felt like I was in the movie Avatar at times. I felt everything around me. But I had this deep peace, which is what I asked for. And the peace was, this is always here. You can choose to see it. You can choose to feel this, but you have to allow yourself to surrender and see it. And that was kind of this message I got. It was just this profound knowing, this profound peace. And that's what I asked for. And so that's how the journey went. I knew there was points along that journey I could have really disassociated. Uh, so they call that the ego death, right? So that's where you're splitting, and I felt those profound moments, but I always kind of had a choice. So it was a really interesting journey because I could feel things kind of floating away from me, but I could kind of bring them back in, and that's where I chose to stay. I liked where I was at. I felt I was getting a lot of what I needed, and coming through it, it was just kind of this beautiful coming back down. It took several hours, and then I was very hungry, and I had a little bit of pizza. I always joke that trip for pizza. It's just something to admit. But it was an incredible journey, and Um, and it's something I'll never forget. It was one of the most, and a lot of people say this, one of the most profound experiences of their life. You kind of reach to the other side and you have this deeply connected feeling, and it feels like it's so far beyond what you're able to experience in what we call the 3D. It gives you a glimpse at what's beyond there. So it was a fantastic journey. I remember messaging you everything that happened afterwards. I wrote a lot, and we're going to talk about what all that is a little bit more. But Angie ended up going on a journey shortly after me, and I was fortunate enough to get to be there and help her with that. But I share with them what your experience was because we had a little bit different.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. I remember the morning after you were up bright and early had sent me this long voice memo, and some people really want to internalize their journeys, right? And really want to just take time to process them internally. But we are very much, we speak out. Our ability to process is through verbalization. And you and I talk a lot and really do a lot of what did that mean to you? What do you think the underlying lesson in that experience is? And it was so fun to be able to be on the other side of seeing you having gone through it, because I was getting the calling as well right around that time, and I was nervous, like it. So it was interesting. A couple of years ago, when I was newer on the spiritual path, I was like, I want to reach enlightenment, right? And oh my God, I want to do mushrooms because that's how I get there. And I will tell you, the mushrooms were like, no, bitch, it's not time. And I really didn't have experiences 3 times in a row. And it was a sign to me, like, you're bypassing, right? And we'll talk a lot more about like what comes into deciding if you're ready or the actual calling, because you and I got the call loud. And my kind of true calling happened this spring when randomly I was meeting all of these people who facilitated journeys, and like I had never met a human in the area we live who does this, and they were coming out of the woodwork. And so I had happened to connect with some other colleagues in my industry of hypnotherapy who facilitate journeys, and had asked them, like, I want to help people with hypnosis for psychedelic integration. How do I go about doing this? What is the process? And, they were so gracious to sit down with me and say, first off, before you ever do that, you have to work with the medicine. You can't, don't do hypnosis unless with medicine, or after medicine for integration, unless you've experienced it. And they were like, but don't do it because you want the experience to do that, right? Like, have your intentions be pure. And I was like, okay, like that's so valuable and very valid, right? And so I had, you had your journey. And, I was feeling the nudge on my heart, like it's time. And, there was an opportunity to work with someone, who did integration support. And my intuition was like, that's not how this is going to happen, and my intention really going in, was deep healing. I had a lot of stuff happen that we can talk about next episode, that I had done all the things I know to do. I've done the therapy, I've done the hypnosis, I've done the meditation, the surrender, and all of this. And I still hit these blocks where I'm like, I don't know how to get through this because I've done everything I can do, and I've been as much as I can be, right? Because sometimes it's not about doing, it's about being. And I've done and been all these things. And so, you and I had set up a time to do this journey. Having been there yourself, you felt comfortable kind of just holding space, right? Like, really, and I don't think I would have been comfortable going in, had I not been with you, a trusted, really good friend. And that's such a big part of the process is the setting and your intentions and the surroundings with whom is in your setting. And so we had, I had intuited kind of the dose for myself, which was also a heroic dose. And the day of, we had fasted and really wanted to make sure that we set ourselves up to have a beautiful experience. And kind of into the afternoon, I felt a little bit of like nerves and agitation coming up, in part because I was hangry, right? You're fasting all day. And got to the point of creating, the space and getting the medicine ready. And just this profound peace washed over me. And I knew, like yourself, I don't do well with substances. I've never been a girl who could drink alcohol without getting really sick. I never had a positive experiences with kind of other things I had utilized. And so I just was like, I feel like this is different. I felt a draw to it. And once we had the medicine, we had this beautiful setting. We started to do meditation and I felt it kick in. And that I think for a lot of people can be really scary because your body starts to feel heavy and it can feel like anxiety, in your chest, it can feel like anxiety and it can also feel like nausea. Now I didn't do the extensive research you did. I kind of went in and I was like, all right, we're just gonna, I'm kind of the fuck around and find out girl, like, but I had my intentions and we joke because we do things very differently. I'm the jump in and figure it out. And you're very methodical and, very intentional. And I'm kind of like, let's just see what happens. But my spirit kind of took over. Like I knew, Angie, you need to breathe through this. And like, here's what you need to start doing. And it was very much complete surrender, and we had talked about that. My goal is to be in a state of surrender just to receive whatever I need to receive. And I really kind of my first journey, the intentions was more spiritual growth, like help me understand, or grow in the ways that would benefit me right now, and also impart my purpose. Like, what am I doing or not doing that's in better benefit for me, et cetera. And I did have the out of body experience. I was completely dissociated, and it was incredible to be the witnesser of my 3D body from a very different realm. And the visuals were just unbelievable. There was a lot of kind of, I guess, sacred geometry and hieroglyphics, things that my 3D self doesn't. I don't know what they mean. um, Profound just experiences. And I recognized there were points where, I started to see some visuals that could have been interpreted as frightening, right? Yet I knew, look at it with curiosity, simply stay in a space of curiosity. And, they call it kind of what I think they call it weeping or like, leaking, where I was just streaming a profound amount of tears, but I wasn't sad. I was just like releasing and I was yawning and doing all these things that were so, again, not me. It was just kind of moving through me. And, there were points where you're like, what's going on over there? And I couldn't talk. Like I couldn't explain what I was experiencing. It's not within the realm of words. And, I had seen how it was so beautiful because, I had seen how my spiritual best friends, these people that I've come to know so well in the last 5 years, how all of us, the work we're doing is like this spider's web of synergy for all of us to do what we're doing on a bigger scale. And I had, tapped into my brother and his wife who are very spiritual and understood how the healing they were doing was helping me heal, helping others heal. Again, all this interconnectedness. I had this knowingness of how my husband, who did psychedelics, it's really funny. We broke up when we were 18 because he was going to go drop acid at Bonnaroo. And I was so anti drugs, right? I had no idea about psychedelics because we're coming out of the war on drugs. And I just thought it was like, oh my God, he's going to overdose. And I had no idea, I was indoctrinated into this idea and system that this is all scary and really bad and it's brain rot and whatever. And so we had broken up and it was funny because, and now we're married, right? So things work out as they're meant to. But I had understood how him doing psychedelics back in the day energetically created this path for me to do it now because all things are happening at one time. So it was as though him kind of in this, I don't want to say parallel universe, but in this simultaneous experience was doing that so that I could do this now. And I had tapped into some past lives where I saw myself dying. um, and it was with complete neutrality. I was like, "Oh, and I died. Oh, that's sad. Oh well." And it was just like, "Oh well," like, "Oh, do it again." It was literally,
What it was like. She was like, "Oh, okay, I
whatever.
died. I'm
You know,
sad."
it literally like, you're playing Mario Brothers and Mario dies and you come back. You're like, "Whatever, it's fine." Like, no, there was no emotion of sadness around it. It was just like, "Oh well, like that happened." And it's interesting. You and I debriefed on that and some of the possibly energetic carryover in my current life. And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting because I've had some symptoms that relate to how I died in that life." And I'm like, "That's really kind of cool." And I never realized that. Um, because everything's energy, so it's so wild. And there was a point where you looked at me and you said, "This is the initiation." And, you looked like this beautiful, like shamanic woman and just, I mean, so ancient in your wisdom. And you're like, this is your initiation. And I was like, I know. And you had said something to the effect of welcome to the medicine. And I was like, but we've done this before, and this
Yeah.
was my first time like really experiencing it. And again, it was like this complete download. And I don't use that word much because I don't necessarily think I receive downloads, but it was like I had this just knowing how to work with the medicine, how to utilize it, how to move within it, what everything was trying to teach me. And it was this profound knowingness that this is what I'm meant to do. And, as intuitive as it was to have my own children, that is how intuitive the medicine was to me, which is just something I've never experienced in my life. Like I've had moments of profound knowing, and that was one of them. And there's so many things that happen within that. I re-experienced my dad passing away. He had a heart attack when I was 15, and I just got this really intense chest pain at one point, and I was like, "Oh, it's dad." But it was just kind of like, "Yep, it's dad, and that's okay." And I just kept giggling because everything was interesting. I was a part of the all that is. And again, when I can consciously understand that, but to on a physical, spiritual, emotional way truly understand it, like completely embody that, it is such a different experience versus, yeah, of course, we're all part of the one that is, like we're all interconnected, but I was it. Like I was friggin', little neutrons and electrons and whatever floating around in space. Like I was it. And when they talk about, I think this is what is so freaking neat. When you have this kind of ego death or experience where you're dissociated, it feels more home than here. And that's what so many people who have near death experiences say. I was at home. This isn't home. I felt so at home there, knowing like this is temporary. Like I've come here and I'm here for a reason, but that's home. And, and in that it was so cute because I would I would get breathless and I would be like, "Oh, human needs to breathe. Breathe for human." And then I like take a breath and then, human's getting tired, sweet human. Go yawn for her. And yawn for human. She's tired, and I would yawn for myself. And it was just this really interesting experience. And, I kept saying to you, "Oh, human," because you were very analytical. That's who you are, asking questions and, curious. And I'm like, "Oh, human, it's okay. You're so analytical, human," and you're just the little brain's going and you're just processing it. And it wasn't like I wasn't bothered at all. It was just like, "Oh, human, she's just humaning." And so we kind of joke like, "Oh, human," like, so the
Yeah.
humans, and I say that now, if I get triggered, like, "Oh, human's getting triggered, look at her go," and it's just kind of cute. It brings a stage of lightness to our experience. It's not to say that what we're experiencing in the 3D is not valid and isn't hard or isn't beautiful or whatever, but it's also not the full reality, and I really, the next day I went home. So we had stayed, I had not driven that night, of course, and come home to my children and was just in this state of like, wow, look at these little beings. They're just so beautiful. Like everything was just so profound, and I had that feeling for quite a while after the medicine. You're still integrating for a few weeks after you have your experience, really even longer. I mean, they say kind of the neuroplasticity that you have from medicine is about 2 weeks, but you're still integrating, months out. Like, and these are truly life-changing experiences for people that are just so beautiful. And again, you and I have both said there were points where if we didn't surrender, it could have been what people would have called a bad trip, air quote, bad trip. But I don't believe that, there's necessarily the medicine shows you what it needs to. And so it's all interpretation. To me, that was the most beautiful journey. To someone else, that could have been terrifying, not having any control. I could not move. Like I was on the couch for hours. And those are some other trippy things that happen too. Like I would think a thought and it would happen in reality. I would think like it'd be really nice to have a fire. And then Ty, your son, came up and was like, "Hey, do you guys want a fire?" And I'm like, Hold on. I just thought that and that happened." Like I literally was manifesting reality in real time. And I was like, "Holy shit, this is the power of our thoughts." I mean, I could go on and, we can save that conversation for the next episode, but it's really, it was so transformational. And, as you said, not, every journey is going to be different. And it's kind of like sex. Like you want your first time to be fucking beautiful and amazing. And I really want that for everybody, right? Like I want everybody's first time to be so
Yeah.
powerful. And, I think if you set the stage, it can be that beautiful, we'll talk more about different strains and some of the nuances of that. But it's not something to be feared at all, but it's not something I would rush. If you're not getting the call and you're doing it to bypass the real work you have to do, that's the wrong intention. So I don't want to jump ahead too much because I want to save these conversations for the next episode. But it was profound, and we journaled on a lot, and there was just a lot that came up that was incredibly life changing. So
Yeah. It was a really cool thing to experience as the person who went on the heroic dose and the person who assisted, because I wasn't out of the medicine. I was in the medicine with you, not as far as you, but enough. And in that, my intention was, I'm here to support you. I'm here to energetically, physically, emotionally support you. And what was remarkable is that the laughter, so you can clear in a lot of different ways. My first journey, I would go through like a bout of grief or crying, and I would come through and I would laugh. And I remember that you just laughed. There was only laughter, and it was contagious. So the energy is contagious. And there were times when you and I were both laughing so hard, laying there at we don't know what, laughing so hard we had tears pouring down our face. And you were mascara city. It was tears. And and then there was just so much releasing. It's just a really interesting thing. And so, yeah, the second part of that though, which I really feel like we should touch on. I know that there's going to be a lot of viewership on this episode. And the reason there's a lot of viewership is because people are so interested. I cannot believe the amount of people I have these conversations with. And they're there already. People I would have never assumed. And they're going, I'm looking into it. I'm looking into it. I'm curious about it because we all collectively have such deep healing we got to get to, right? That's where ascension is taking us. It's how do we get down here? How do we really get this deeper integration? So integration is the next thing. And this is a really important thing. Angie has said the word bypassing. That's one part of it. Integration is the other part. This is not a recreational conversation we're having about this. This is not what I think a lot of people associate it with. We're not on the hippie medicine to go out to a rave. That's not what this is. This is a journey that lasts a very long time before, during, and beyond the medicine. So beforehand, you kind of talked about it. For me, I am very analytical. I'm very connected, but I analyze. That's what I do. And so beforehand, the learning, the understanding, the feeling secure in my decision was very important. And I think it was really important to what I did because that allowed me to attach my reason to it. Why am I doing this? What is it I'm hoping to gain? What are my expectations of this? Am I willing to surrender to things that may seem hard? I walked in with all of that and with the decision that I was going to surrender in it. So that was my pre. My during, I already explained. But now we have the post. What are we doing after? Because, like you said, there's a window of time and it gets less potent, right? The neuroplasticity gets less potent as time goes on. But what you consume after is massively important to what you end up rewiring. So the journey is the scrambling. It's this profound experience, but what you do after is arguably far more important. And I think I read, and so I'm not going to say this is a fact, but I'm pretty sure I read it was like the next 6 hours post journey are the most intense neuroplasticity. And then it just kind of like dwindles from there a little bit. So our post journey integration for me, I took immediately to a journal. Of course, I voice memoed you my whole experience. I must have sent you like several voice memos, but I knew what I was doing. This was me sharing with you, a trusted friend and in your own right, a therapist of sorts, right? Hypnotherapy gives you street cred. And so I wasn't just telling a random person, I was confiding in you. And I was sharing with you my journey from front to end because I knew that was a really significant part. And then I journaled it all. This is what happened. This is where I started. This is where it ended. This is what I felt. This is what it meant to me. This is what I understand now. And I journaled for a couple weeks very consistently. And I let myself kind of get stuck in the thought of it, daydream about it a little bit, explore the, oh, yeah, oh, remember how that felt. Like keep bringing it back. And that is a lot of the integration work I did for myself. Now, you and I are both people who, and we're going to go into this later, but we both have a lot of background in things like trauma, conditioning, things like that. Personally, we both work with people that are exploring themselves on deeper levels. I'm more situated in the business world. I work with a ton of human beings, human being, and you do the same. We do slightly different things, but we're both on a higher consciousness spectrum of working with people. And so I feel very secure that you and I can do these things for one another. I feel we have graduated these things. So I don't want anybody to misconstrue that though. I'm not saying don't do it with your buddy. That's not my message. But if you truly want to say do this medicine and really receive what it's got to offer, plan for how you're going to pre it, do it, post it. Wouldn't you agree?
I do, and I'm hosting some classes on all of that for anyone who's interested, reach out. Um, a big part of it, I had a mentor early in my awakening say, and he was speaking to ayahuasca, but this pertains to any psychedelic medicine. When you are in the realm of psychedelics, you're exposing yourself to a lot of energetic fuckery. So you have to make sure you're being really careful with who you're around during that experience, right? And we can talk about some of those experiences personally ourselves, but we won't go there today. But with the post integration, it's like taking a glove off your hands and putting it on the wrong fingers, if you don't have proper integration. And, the risk of psychosis and problems are low. However, there is a risk if you don't have proper integration support or have it done in the proper setting that, you're not going to put those puzzle pieces back together the way that they should fit, or the way they're going to be recalibrated optimally for you. So, that's not to say this, this is scary. It's not. It's really a very gentle medicine, but you do need to be very mindful going into it that you have the right support. And again, we are here as resources for you on our own journeys, but also with, a lot of the areas that we're speaking to and moving into. But moreover, trust the calling, trust your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, don't go, that was my experience. I was treading in some areas with working with a person, and it did not feel right. My intuition was a big no. And I was trying to rationalize why. And I finally just had to trust my gut. Like there's a reason, and it's not that maybe it would be horrible, but it wasn't the optimal thing for me. So if any part of your being is like, this is not the time, this is not the circumstance, this isn't the person to walk me through it, don't do it. It's, don't. And that's not to say, people do go to raves. They go to concerts all the time and they have a blast. We're talking about the therapeutic use of this in a very intentional setting for deep, deep healing. And some people will argue you can go to a Fish concert and get that healing with medicine. Yes. That's not what we do. That's not what we're about, but that's lovely for some people. That's just not the realm we're working in. So, thanks for listening today. I do want to, we're going to continue this conversation because there's so much more I want to talk about with this. And again, we're going to be hosting some upcoming classes. So please stay tuned on details of those in the coming months because there's a lot of information. And, as much as I am the let's fuck around and find out girl, I do research. Okay. I'm not recklessly doing stuff either. But I'm so grounded in my intuition that I trust myself exclusively with my own journey. So, we've done a lot of research on this. We've done a lot of our own work as well. And have done some experimenting, to kind of understand the medicine further. And we're happy to share all of that, in the coming weeks and months because there's a lot. And we're in the coolest fucking time right now. I mean, we're in some energetic, really intense stuff, but man, the awakenings and the ascension that's happening is incredible. And, people are really wanting to tap into these medicines. And, you were kind of starting to talk about this a little bit, but when I started to open up about my experience with the medicine, the number of people, high level people, very well known physicians, CEOs, people were like, "Oh yeah, I've done that. It's amazing." I was like, well, "What the hell?" It's like this underground network of people.
Telling us what they're doing.
It's like Fight Club. Like, let's all talk about this. Like, it's not a secret. The more we normalize this, the more, we do reduce the fear around it. This isn't to be feared, but it is to be respected. And, so many brilliant ideas come from medicine journeys. So much profound healing comes from this. So it's not just,
Music, all sorts of, there's so
yeah,
much stuff.
so
Yeah.
much. So, anyways, like I said, we'll talk about this more next time. But thanks for tuning in because this was a really fun conversation. And as questions come up, as you guys want us to dive into certain aspects of this, please let us know because we could talk for days and days on all of these things. It's just so much fun for us.
For sure. All right. Thanks, guys. Till
Thanks.
next time.
See ya.
See ya.